My name is Cagney Coomer, but I'm officially Dr. Cagney Coomer now. I am from Lexington, Kentucky. I am number 7 in 15 children. I am I'm the second girl of 15. And on my mother's side, I'm number one of three. I'm first generation everything. I'm first generation high school graduate. I'm first generation undergraduate. I'm first generation to get a PhD in my family. Which has made this a really interesting journey to come along because at every step I really haven't known what I was doing. I kind of just was like, well, let's see what happens, and it's kind of really turned out really well for me. But I never was one of those people that had guidance. I couldn't go to my parents and be like, well, can you help me fill out a FAFSA? Because me and my dad freshman year spent like 5 hours trying to figure out how to fill out the FAFSA. And then after that, he was like, from now on, you're in charge of this. Don't ask me. I'll send you my W-2s. And that's pretty much how it went for the rest of my college experience was if there were things that I was interested in and wanted to do, my family couldn't help me, but they would give me all the things that I needed to pursue it, and they would support me in any way they could. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I went to a high school that is probably considered the second worst high school in my city. The first worst high school is literally a high school that is designed for kids that get kicked out of public high school. So my high school was very low ranked. Um, I made good grades. I played sports. I was a very active student, but I was not thinking about college. I have way too many siblings to even like rationalize the fact that I would ask my parents to pay for me to go to college. There are just too many of us, and I have too many little siblings to think about taking that kind of money out of my household. So I just didn't think about college. I was thinking like, I'll get a job. But at the end of my sophomore year, my guidance counselor gave everybody these packets and she was like, we all needed to take this test. So we needed to go home, fill out the packet, bring the packet back. So I went home, I had the packet filled out, I brought the packet back. I didn't even know it was the ACT. I didn't know that it was the test you needed to get to college. My guidance counselor wasn't talking to me about college. So those things just weren't formulating in my mind. So I went and I took the ACT and I got a 30. And so when the test scores came back, I was actually late to school on the day the test scores came back. And they announced my name over the intercom that I had got a 30. And so but I got to school late. So I had no clue any of that happened. And so I was walking down the hallway and I got to class and my teacher was like, the guidance counselor wants to see you in her office as soon as you get here. And I was like, oh, how many times have I been late to school? I'm thinking I'm about to get in trouble. And I get there and they're all like freaking out, telling me how amazing it is that I got this 30 and congratulating me. And I'm all like, what is going on? What difference does it make? What does that mean? So that means I get to graduate high school early? I mean, what difference does it make? And they're like, no, this means you're going to go to college. You could get college scholarships, blah, blah, blah. You could probably get into any college you could think of. And I was like, oh, I mean, I literally just felt like, oh, I wasn't that excited. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll start thinking about that. So because my ACT scores were so high, like universities started mailing me like applications. Like you should be thinking about coming to our school. And so I had decided, oh, I want to go to a HBCU. I was always interested in marine biology. I love the ocean. I have watched every Steve Corwin episode since it came out. So I feel like really mentally I'm prepared to go and be a marine biologist because in my mind I've already swum in every ocean in the world because I watch Discovery Channel every single day. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a marine biologist. Mind you, I grew up in Kentucky. So that means I grew up in a landlocked state. I've never been on a family vacation. I've never been out of my state. So I actually do not know what an ocean looks like in real life at this point in my life. But I've watched a lot of Discovery Channel and it looks crystal clear water. The fish are colorful. I'm all about that. I think I could do that. So I picked the university and I picked Virginia State. It was 600 miles away from home. My parents were freaking out. Really, I wanted to go to the University of Hawaii. My dad was like, absolutely not. You're not leaving the continent. Have you lost your mind? No way. So I picked Virginia State because it was close to an ocean, but it was also the furthest my parents were going to allow me to go away from home without me having to like hold them hostage. So I was like, all right, Virginia State it is. Sorry, I forgot my timer was on. I was like, okay, Virginia State it is. I'm gonna go. This is gonna be amazing. So I get to campus and I make some friends, and most of my friends are from Virginia, and they're like, let's go to the beach. I'm like, yes, I need to go to the beach so I can start preparing for my career as a marine biologist. Let's go to the beach. And one of my friends, they actually have a boat. She's like, my mom says that they'll take us out on the boat this weekend. Everybody can stay at my house. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be in the ocean. I'm gonna be start fulfilling my dreams already. So we go the next day. I get up, we go to her house, we get ready to go out on the boat. I'm so excited. And we're just drifting out. And I'm like, this doesn't really look like Discovery Channel. And they're all like, come on, let's jump in. I'm like, jump in the water? That looks deep. They're like, no, it's going to be amazing. So they're like jumping off the boat, splashing and stuff. And I'm like, this does not look amazing. I actually feel really terrified. You can't see the bottom. Where is the crystal clear? Where are the rainbow fish? I don't see none of that. And it's the Atlantic Ocean. So it's kind of like murky looking. It's like a little brownish gray. You probably can't see more than about 2 feet down anyway. So I am like, I don't know about this. Well, her brother is like maybe 17. He thinks it's funny. He's like, no, get in the water. Boosh. Pushes me right in the water. I was like, oh my God, I am going to die. And immediately I knew humans are not built to be in this ocean, actually. This is not it. My body's not equipped. I don't have fins. I don't have gills. If I go under, I won't be able to breathe. This water stinks. It's dirty. It tastes terrible. What was I thinking? So I get out the boat. I get out the water and I sit on the boat for the whole rest of the time we're there. I do not even put my foot back in the water because it stinks. And to this day, I will not go further than like calf muscle deep in the ocean. I am not an ocean lover, actually. Even though it's my dream to be a marine biologist, I'm not an ocean person. And so we got back to campus and I went to my advisor and I was like, my dream all these years has been to be a marine biologist, but I'm scared of the ocean. What should I do with my life? And she's like, well, why don't you just get this biology degree and see what happens? So I was like, all right, I guess. And so at the end of my first year, at the beginning of my second year, I started working like student work study, and I was working student work study for an organic chemistry teacher, and I would help set up his labs, put all the materials out, that kind of stuff. And I took his organic chemistry class. I did really well. He was like, you should really just be a chemistry major because biology majors make no money. And I was like, oh man, but I already did all this biology stuff. I don't know if I really want to go back and have to do chemistry stuff. He's like, oh, it's just a couple more classes. It'll be fine. So I decided I was going to double major. So I graduate. Oh, first time seeing the ocean. I didn't like it. So I graduated in 2010 with a dual bachelor's in biology and chemistry. I graduated summa cum laude. I have done plenty of work studies. So that means I've worked in plenty of labs in my career. I did a summer internship at the FBI. I'd done lots of stuff. So I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to get me a good job. I'm going to make me some good money. I'm going to live my life. This is going to be amazing. And then I started interviewing for jobs after undergrad. And they were like, oh, your application looks great. You've done a lot of dishwashing. You can pour a mean plate, but you actually don't have any really usable skills. And one guy even told me that I was a brilliant glorified dishwasher at my interview. And I was like, okay, well, this wasn't the plan. I thought I was just going to get a job and it was going to be really easy. And so I guess this is really when my career started, because what I did was I started Googling and I found there's a community college program in my city and it's a biotechnology program. And so essentially what my plan was to go there and get the lab skills I needed to then get the job. It seemed really simple. I had the degree, but I didn't have the skills. There was a 2-year program. They would give me the skills. I would get the job. I was like, I can do this. This is going to be a breeze. My first day of class, I walked into class and my PI, my teacher, She was just standing at the class and she started talking and she was talking and talking. And I was raising my hand. I was asking all these questions like, well, will I be able to get a job? How about this? What about this? And she was interacting with me. And so after class, she just pulled me to the side and she told me that she was interested in writing an EPSCoR grant. And so EPSCoR is a grant it's an NSF funded grant that you can basically write to create research programs or research opportunities for underrepresented and underprivileged students. And so together, her and I worked together and we wrote this Kentucky EPSCoR grant and we got it. And so the point of the project was to elucidate the properties in the aloe vera gel, and we were going to use next generation sequencing. And so my job in the project was actually to develop a protocol for growing aloe vera on a petri dish. And so I worked, and in the process, we recruited 4 other students, 4 other girls, and we all worked together on this project for 2 years. I traveled all over the country. I shared my research, and I was like, oh, science is really cool. And I really like this research thing that has to do with science. While I was in this program, 2 things happened. One, I started doing science outreach and I was like, oh, this is really fun. Kids really like science. I really like science. Basically, I think science is magic and I get to go out and be like the magician for little kids. And then at the end of my magic show, I get to explain to them how this all happened. I mean, why not? That's amazing. But I also got a job. Yay me. I was so excited. Like I finally got a job. So I got a job at the Advanced Genetic Technology Center, and it's basically a sequencing facility. When I got there, all they had was Sanger sequencing. And so my job was to optimize the chemistry of each next generation sequencing platform as it came down the line. So when I got there, it probably cost like $20,000 to sequence the human genome, and it took more than a month. And by the time I left my job, you could do it in 16 hours and it cost like $1,000. That's how fast I only worked there for 2 years. So that's how fast next generation sequencing like moved in those 2 years. So I started out by optimizing the chemistry in 454, then Ion Torrent, then Illumina, MySeq, and just all the way down the platform. But I was gaining really good skills. My favorite part of my job wasn't actually the chemistry part, because once I optimized the chemistry and we had a good flow through system, they wouldn't let me tweak anything else. So once I got to an endpoint, that was the stretch they would let me go. So that wasn't the part I liked about my job. The part I liked about my job is that we met with scientists and their graduate students, and they would tell us about their research projects, and then we would take their samples and we would do the sequencing for their samples. Now, up until this point, I'd heard people say Dr. this or this is Dr. such and such, but like my mind hadn't drawn like the connection that they went to school to get a degree to become a doctor of science. I just never put the pieces together. So I just never really put the pieces together. But as the process went along, I just was really starting to really like learning about the science that the students were doing. In the meantime, in the background, NerdSquad was born. NerdSquad was born because although I liked doing science outreach at my community college, they never went to any of the schools in my own community. And I was really confused because my community is like 2 blocks from the college, but they go to schools that are like 20 and 30 minutes away to do outreach. When we have a school that's in walking distance, we could have put our materials in a wagon and walked to the schools in my community, but we never did. And then I started asking, like, how come we don't go to the schools in my community? And they would literally look at me and act like they never heard of those schools. I'm like, so you don't drive past this school every day on your way to work? Because that's impossible. They would be like, no, where is it at? 2 blocks that way. And so I kept like we would have like these meetings for science outreach to pick where we would go. And I would always suggest schools in my neighborhood. And they would always like, no, they would just basically veto it, no. And so I was like, well, maybe they just are scared to come to my neighborhood. So I want to do my own outreach then. And I want to go to my own community and I want to start doing stuff in my own community. But then I received an award as one of the top up and coming scientists And when I received that award, I went to this meeting in DC. And up to that point, I just thought the reason I was the only Black person in my building was because I lived in Kentucky. I did not like think that this was a global issue or any of that. I just thought, oh, I live in Kentucky, so that's why I don't see a lot of Black people doing science. So I went to this meeting and I was the only Black person. I was like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me you scout the whole country and I'm the only one at this table? That is weird. And the keynote speaker got up and she said that the science industry brings in $6.8 billion a year into our economy. And people of color only make up 1.2% of the working class. And of that 1.2%, Black women make up 0.07%. And I was like, whoa, what is the problem? What is going on here? So I came home and I just would like go out in my neighborhood and like ask little kids, why don't you like science? They were like, science is boring. What? Ew, I don't like science. Math is too hard. Gross. And like I would ask grown-ups, why don't your kids like science? They were like, Black people aren't good at math and science. We never been good at math and science. It's just what we don't do. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Because I'm Black. I'm good at math. I'm good at science. I live in the same neighborhood with y'all. So I don't even know how this even makes any sense to me. So what I did was I went to all the community centers and I asked them if I could host a science night. My plan was to go to the community centers, do little science experiments with kids and just show them why I thought science was cool. And when I first started, we got like 10 kids, but by the end of my first month, we had 45. And I mean, they were coming. And I designed all my activities so that the cost to do an experiment was less than $20. And all of the materials were readily available. And so I would bring extra baggies. And if there were leftover materials and any kid was excited about the experiments we do, I would have little printed out directions on procedures. And I would put all the materials in a baggie and I would send it home and I would say, go home and show your families. And so parents would come to my science nights. They would bring the little kids. Like everybody was coming to science nights. And I was like, well, started talking to kids like, well, why don't you like science at school? They like, school science is so boring, Miss Cece. I'm like, no, science is not boring. That doesn't make sense. They're like, no, it's really boring. So I reached out to the principal at the elementary school and I was like, could I come shadow a science class? I just want to see what public education science looks like. He was like, sure, come whenever you want. So I went and shadowed the science class and I was like, school science is boring. Wow, what is this? This is horrible. I would have hated science if I had to do this. So I went to the principal and I was like, this is what I can do. I can design and develop interactive activities that are more engaging based on the teacher's curriculum. And then I can come in once a week and I can execute those projects. And so the principal partnered me with the fourth grade because in Kentucky, only fourth and sixth grade get science because that's when the state pays for the test. And then ninth grade, you get biology. So they don't even have a good scientific foundation before they're already introduced to biology. So I was like, well, this is terrible. But whatever, I'll work with the fourth grade. So I came for a year and I worked with the fourth grade teachers. And by the end of the year, all the students were like, well, we want to do Nerd Squad. We want to have Nerd Squad. And so what happened was the principal let them vote. And the students basically voted that Nerd Squad would become an elective at their school. And so the same way students get gym and art, now at the elementary schools, they get STEM. And we created a STEM lab. And so on Thursdays, I would come to STEM lab and I would teach the STEM lab teacher with the fourth graders how to execute these project-based learning activities. And then she would teach them to every other grade for the rest of the week. And then at the end of each school year, we would have a science night where we would invite the families and the communities to come to the science nights. And then the students would become the experts and they would teach all about the science they had learned all year. And it became really popular. Like science nights would get 300 and 400 people from all over the community to come out and like see these kids and support these kids. And so Nerd Squad began to grow. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it's still growing to this day. But one of the major things that I started doing with Nerd Squad is I stopped being the teacher And what I would do is I would train high schoolers, and me and the high schoolers, we would work together and we would design and develop this curriculum. And then they would go to the schools and they would go out in the communities and they would become the experts and they would teach. And because the mayor in our city will pay students to work for different companies, I partnered with that program, and those students got paid like it was a job to go and work and do the science outreach. And because of that, we began to grow even more. But I wanted to make sure that we were also mentoring those high school girls. And so we would bring in scientists from all over the world. We would take them to different labs. We would go on college tours and field trips so that they didn't just feel like they were being used just to do the outreach. I wanted to make sure that we were investing in their dreams because they want to be scientists someday. And it seems like it's been working pretty well. Well, in the process of all of this, one day I was just talking to my old boss at the sequencing facility about, the work we've been doing and how I thought it was cool. And he was like, I think you should be a PhD student. You should get a doctorate. And I was like, what is a PhD? And he was like, a PhD. And I was like, never heard of it. I don't know what that is. I never heard of it. He's like, I'm a PhD. And I'm like, oh, that's why I call you doctor. The light bulb came on, right? I mean, I never interacted with anybody with a PhD other than at work. I don't know a lot of people who went to college in my regular everyday life. So it just never really dawned on me that these people were called doctors because they had a degree that made them doctors. I just didn't get it. And on top of that, the next thing he told me was that they would pay me to go to college. And I was like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that I can get a degree and they're going to give me money to get this degree? How do I sign up? So before I could sign up, he told me how to take the GRE and all of this. And I was freaking out because the GRE costs a lot of money. I didn't make a lot of money. I was like, are they kidding? What if I don't get a good enough score? I'm not sure I want to do this because that's going to be a waste of money if I don't. He was like, we'll pay for it. So I was like, well, you're kind of not giving me a choice. I guess I got to try it if you're going to pay for it. So they paid for it. I took the GRE. My scores were nothing to even talk about, brag about, discuss, like absolutely not. And so I started applying to all these programs. And so I got interviews at Emory, I got interviews at Howard, I got interviews at UK, and I got interviews at EKU. So I went to all of my interviews and I went on these tours and I met all these people and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to love grad school. These people are brilliant. I never even thought about a life where I get to think all day. This is crazy. I'm going to love it. And I went to my interviews and I got accepted into all the places I interviewed at, but I chose to go to UK because I really didn't know a lot about a PhD and I was kind of scared to leave my safety net in order to like venture out on something that not only I don't know about, but nobody I really love knows about. But I live in Lexington where I'm like 10 to 76% of the city. So, I mean, if I fail, there are 76% of the city there to catch me. So I probably should just stay here and do it. So that was the decision. I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to do this. So I wrote back and I told them that I wanted to accept my acceptance to grad school at UK. And they wrote me back and they told me that my acceptance was conditional. That they were going to accept me into a master's program and we could see how I do to see if I was good enough to actually transition into a PhD program. But in the meantime, I needed to think about taking my GRE over because my scores were less than optimal. And if I thought I would get any kind of grants and funding with those scores, it wouldn't happen. So immediately I was like, oh, I don't know what to tell them because I can't afford to take this test again. So if they're going to let me in, I'm just going to work real hard and we just going to have to pretend like I didn't hear them say that because I can't afford to take this test again. I just can't. So I chose to go to Dr. Ann Morris's lab. She is a zebrafish researcher. She studies the retina at the University of Kentucky. When I came to her lab, when I interviewed, she had the best reputation amongst all the graduate students in the department. Everybody had positive, glowing things to say about her. She seemed really nice. When I was interviewing, she made sure to help me like along each process. I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to go to her lab. Also, the very first time I actually went to her lab and she started like talking to me about the retina and how retina research was so important, I was like, I never really thought about how important my eyeballs are. I just never, like, I never thought about it. I get up every day and I see. I never thought about what life would be like if I couldn't see. And to listen to her thought about it, I was like, oh, this is actually really important research, and I'm down for this. So she said I could come to her lab. I was really excited. At first, I was like, I'll rotate, but at this moment, I'm going to go to her lab. And so I went home and I started to prepare for graduate school. My very first day of graduate school was like the most culture shocking moment of my life. But I also realized that that was the moment I should have known what this experience was going to be like, but I wanted to give it to a benefit of the doubt. So my very first day of graduate school, the very first class I have to take is a first year orientation kind of class where basically they are supposed to give you the tools that you need to be successful in graduate school. So I went to my first year class, and the very first day, the professor's talking about all the different degrees and like what they mean and why PhD is so high and what you do with it and those kind of things. And he's going down the list and he's like, and people who go to community college, they won't ever be anything but plumbers. But you know, the world needs plumbers. And I was just sitting there with my little community college degree, feeling really proud of myself to be in that seat. And I was like, oh, well, I just don't think he's very aware. So it's okay. I couldn't wait till class was over, and I went back to my lab and I wrote him this long email with all the links to my program and how we're doing all these things. And he wrote me back and said, oh yeah, I forgot about that little technician program. And I was like, okay, that's all right. You can't please everybody. It's cool. So then the next part of that class was the 2 weeks later, we had to meet with him for an in-person interview where you like just went and you talked about, I guess you're supposed to talk about like what you expected out of graduate school. But I thought he was going to tell us like more about graduate school, but like on a one-on-one basis. So I get to his office and he asked me all about he asked me about like, am I excited to be there and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm really excited. He was like, so what is your research project going to be? And I was like, well, I only been here 3 weeks. I have no clue what my research project is going to be. Am I supposed to know what my research project is going to be? Should I be going home every day and like figuring out what my research project is going to be? He was like, so whose lab you in? I was like, well, I'm rotating in Dr. Morris's lab. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to need your hand held, and she's a hand holder. I don't take students like you because I don't hold hands. So I went to the bathroom and I cried for an hour. I mean, I just cried because I was so angry and I really didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to say nothing that would like get me in any kind of trouble. So the only other like emotion I could like muster was tears. So I just went and cried. And then I left there and I went to Dr. Morris's office and I told her about what happened. And I was like, I'm not even sure if I should be offended. I don't know like what to say or think. And she was like, he's an asshole. I'm offended. And I was like, all righty then, that settles that. And so I started TAing and I really liked TA and I was really excited. But I think TAing is when I realized how hard graduate school was going to be for me. And it wasn't the science, it was just the work environment. So I was TAing for about, I say we'd been TAing for a little over 2 months. And one of my students missed class. And she reached out, she had a doctor's note. I had to make it up with her. So I reached out to the person who's in charge of the TAs. I explained what happened. She told me to just go to the classroom, check out a laptop and meet with my student and do the makeup. So I went to the classroom like 7 o'clock in the morning. I signed the checkout sheet. I took out a laptop. I met with my student at 8 o'clock. We worked through all of the activities. She was made up. 9 o'clock was when the first class started. So I did it that way so that I could make sure I got the laptop back by the time the first class started. So I come into the classroom as the students had all sat down. I walked behind the TA who have been in every training with me. So I'm the only Black person here. So there's no way he doesn't know who I am. And I'm walking behind him and I'm like, I'm just gonna put this laptop up. And he snatches the laptop from me in front of everybody. He's like, how dare you take a laptop out of here? These laptops don't leave this room. And so I'm just like so shocked, like, whoa, why are you screaming at me? How inappropriate is this? But I don't want to be the angry Black girl and scream back at you in front of all of these students because I already know this is going to look bad on me versus it looking bad on you. So I just hand them the laptop, I turn around on my heels, and I leave. And I go to the bathroom and I cry. I cried a lot in graduate school. And I go to the bathroom and I cry. Then I leave there and I go talk to the person who's in charge of the TAs and I tell her what happens. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe this happens. I'll fix it. So he sends me an email and he's like, I'm so sorry that I treated you that way. I didn't recognize you. I thought you were one of the students in there trying to steal a laptop. And I'm like, well, even if I was a student, this wouldn't have been appropriate. Like, I don't think you can justify it. So he's like, well, can I buy you some Starbucks one day and we could be even? I'm like, no, can you just please never speak to me ever again? If you see me in the hallway, just look straight through me because I'm going to look straight through you. I don't know how long you're going to be here, but for the time I'm here, you are invisible from this moment. Do not ever email me again. I will consider it harassment. And he was like, oh, okay. I apologize. I won't ever email you again. Thank you. Because by this time, I'm like, okay, now I know I got to be here for a while, but I'm just not going to subject myself to this abuse every single day. It's just too much. But in the end, I started doing research. And so in my lab, we used the zebrafish to study, in my old lab, we used the zebrafish to study retinal development and regeneration. I worked on 2 projects. One of my projects was calpain 5, and it's a gene that is associated with this disease called autosomal dominant neovasculature inflammatory vitreoretinopathy. I'm only going to say that one time. I will never say it again for the rest of this talk. ADNIV is what we call that because why is the name so long? I don't know, but it is. It is a very devastating disease. Most patients start out with glaucoma-like symptoms, and it leads to basically the degeneration of the whole eyeball. The disease is so devastating and prevalent because at each stage of the disease, it phenocopies a more commonly known disease, and doctors misdiagnose it. So by the time doctors realize what's going on with the patient, their eyes are usually degenerated and dissolving in their face. And so up until that point, nothing was really known about the gene, what it did, what its role was. And so I spent 4 years basically characterizing its expression, looking at its role in development, creating mutants, and figuring out what this gene does. Really cool project. I really loved it. I was really excited because this was the first time I'd ever worked with an organism like a zebrafish. I only worked with plants doing any science up until this point. And the zebrafish retina is beautiful, and learning how to image it and all of these things became something that I really, really enjoyed. And it also made me start thinking about what my future could look like. So the second gene that I studied was HER9. It is a BHLHO transcription factor. We actually created a mutant, well, 2 mutants. And my job was to characterize the mutant phenotypes, to try to do rescues, to see if we could understand what it does and what its role is in development. I got to step even further into new things, and I got to even look at neurocrest cells and neurocrest cell phenotypes. So I learned a lot, and I was really excited, and I graduated. Good, bad, or indifferent, graduate school was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I have never cried so much in my whole life. I have never experienced so much microaggression and and I've never been put in a place where people made me feel so little ever in my life. But what was so amazing was that I chose to do it in a city where everybody is kin to me. And I created a village of people in my city and on my campus that was amazing. Any Black woman on the University of Kentucky's campus who had power, she was a mentor. They showed up to every talk, every presentation, every poster, any space where I needed there to be a kind face and someone who I knew believed in me and to give me confidence. Those people were there for me. And it was because of that and because they were able to lift me up in a way that I even survived this journey, because being the only one in a space where people don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that there isn't any diversity is really hard. And every time I said that there's something wrong with the fact that I'm the only one, people thought I was crazy. I would be like, you don't even bring presenters that look like me. I was a 4th year before I ever saw a Black scientist asked to present at the university where I work, how am I supposed to think about what my future could be like if in the present I don't even see examples? Not everybody wants to be the first, and necessarily I didn't necessarily sign up to be the first of anything either. So that wasn't never my thought. I wanted to see somebody to look like me that was going to give me the confidence that this is actually an attainable goal. I did not want to go out and persevere like this was reinventing the wheel or something. That was not on my mind. I was not interested. I wanted examples. And I had to go out and find those examples for myself. But by doing so, I learned a lot and I grew a lot as a person. And I think that it helped make me a really strong scientist. In the meantime, in the background of doing all of this and being a graduate student, I was running Nerd Squad, and Nerd Squad was blossoming and thriving. And although I had to keep it a secret from my job because they thought it was a conflict of interest, I worked harder in the lab so that I could compensate from the time I needed to do my outreach. So if that meant if I needed to leave in the middle of the day to go do outreach, I would be at work until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So no one could ever say that I wasn't giving to my program what I contractually signed up to give to my program. But also this outreach stuff was very important to me, and Nerd Squad was very important to me. And it became very important to the people in my city and in my community. So I wasn't going to stop doing it. I was just going to find ways to make it work. And that's what I did. So then I graduated and a pandemic happened, and I had to defend during a pandemic. As if a defense isn't already stressful and scary and like brain racking, I had to write a dissertation and defend that dissertation during a freaking pandemic. It was terrible, but it was actually really cool because my defense was on Zoom and like 400 people came. It was crazy. Every single person I know in my city was at my defense. Whole classrooms were like, teachers were Zooming in their whole classes. Every girl on squad, every undergrad student I had ever mentored, like everybody was there. And it was so exciting to be able to present in front of my family and my friends and to like really express to them how together we got this PhD and how really like it should say it's a community degree, because even when I was studying for qualifying exams, my community was there. I made these like index cards that had all of these questions that I thought they would ask me in qualifying exams with the answers on the back. And I made like 20 copies and I passed them out to people in my community, and they would like randomly call me. I would be driving down the street and they would be like, here's a question, answer right now. And I would be like driving, trying to think of the answers, or I would be like in the middle of stuff. It'd be like right before I go to bed, they would like text me a question and I have to answer the text message question before it was time for me to go to bed. Like they were on it. They were making sure that I was ready. And even they were like, when I was taking my calls, they were bringing Starbucks and putting it on my porch every single day. In the morning, I would wake up and I would go straight to my door and there would be Starbucks waiting for me with like a note, good luck on your qualifying exams. And so it really became something that was a big deal. And so I picked to come to Dartmouth because I met my new PI at a conference. I thought she was really cool. She actually remembered me from another conference and she was just like really empowering. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go to graduate school. I was possibly thinking about doing like some STEM education. And she was like, why? You're a scientist. I was like, yeah, but I don't know if I can make it. She was like, well, if I can make it, why can't you make it? And I was like, well, I just don't know. She was like, well, come to my lab and I'll show you. I'll help you. I'll give you the tools. I'll support you. I will help guide you to the next level. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, you presented a really, good argument. And I Googled her and I was like, oh, she kind of famous and stuff. And people really know her. All right, fine. I'll come to Dartmouth. I'll do a postdoc. I'll see what happens. And so I'm here and I'm doing a postdoc. I'm learning new things. And I went snow tubing and ice fishing. I'm not sure I like the winter that much. I'm learning how to drive in like knee deep snow. It is really terrifying. I don't know how people in the North do this. Why is this life? I don't know, but it is. I had to dig my car out of 4 inches of ice this week. It was terrible. I hated it, but I made it. I figured that if I make it through the first winter in the North, then at least I know what to expect the next winters and I can be prepared. And so that's that. I think that in the future, I hope to have my own lab. I hope that I get to study something that is related to neuroscience and brain development. I'm really interested in developmental biology more than anything. So my hopes is that I pick and decide and find a research project that will allow me to sit in the pocket that I'm really interested in and have a really fruitful lab and mentor more students and just change the way we do science. I want to be able to mentor students and put together and put out whole scientists that are confident people who are supported and who have really been able to thrive in this space. And I want to create a space where people can thrive, because I think I didn't thrive, I just survived. And I don't want to tell people that I just survived my PhD. And I don't want to tell people, yeah, go get a PhD, I hope you survive it too. No, go get a PhD and I hope you thrive. I hope that you become the person that you didn't even know you wanted to be. And so I have to keep doing this, and I have to keep working in this way so that I can help and I can produce students and I can help to set that example for the future. So thank you for inviting me. It was really an emotional week thinking about my journey and how to tell this story. I didn't realize how hard graduate school was because I'm on the other side now, and it just feels so good to be on the other side that I haven't taken any moments to like really look back at the journey. And this being asked to give this talk gave me that opportunity. And I realized that I cried a lot, but those tears led to something very great. I sowed some great seeds, and on the other side of them, I am catching the shade in many trees that I planted.
Thank you so much. I think it is, if we would have been on Zoom, we would have cheered all of us. I think to me, it's really difficult to follow your amazing talk because you walked us through so many emotions. I literally, it's been governed by goosebumps all throughout, but you walked us through like extremely, I haven't laughed so much in a while, to be very honest. This year wasn't quite the setup for laughing a lot, but and especially so many emotional things. And I do have to say that some of us that have been in research for a while, especially women, I think we've all been there through a lot of crying during our PhDs. And the moment when you said that you've never felt so small, I totally relate. It was never, I never realized that this will be a PhD, that you will be put on the spot and like you will be pointed to yourself that you're nothing, that you can't make it here. And that's why I really appreciate you coming out today and telling us all your experiences, because what I really want is for all of you guys out here attending this session is to learn that this is nonsense. This is absolutely something that no one should feel. And yes, again, thank you very much. So just a little bit of organization from this point on. We want to make this a very laid-back conversation. So if you have questions, just raise your hand, or actually just unmute your microphone and ask the question. If you prefer to ask something anonymously, you can chat with me in my in my box, and I can read the question without disclosing your name. So with that, I'll just open to questions. I'm sure we all have so many. I personally have so many. So if you guys want to start, please.
Can I jump in and say it is so good to see you on the other side? I remember when we had breakfast in Lexington when I came out, when was it, like 4 years ago? And you were like, I'm having breakfast with you and I'm going to tell you what I'm dealing with. And I am so proud to see you on the other side and thriving. I'm sorry about the winter. I'm a northerner. I could give you some snow tips. The last time you saw me, I was at AMNH. I'm now the Dean of Science here at City College. And I hope that this time with all of us will make it obvious why I moved over here. It's just an amazing place to be. I love the college. I love the students. It just brings me so much optimism every day. So it's great to see you again. I wish we could have breakfast again.
You as well.
All right, so any questions? I just start, I think like it's always difficult. The first question is the most difficult to answer. I think to me, this is something that I haven't figured out myself, is how do you make the change? So besides what we're doing today is sharing your story, How do you make the change in the ones that are not aware that are about their implicit bias, or implicit or explicit, but about the bias? How do we make an immediate change, like on a daily basis, without pointing to people and telling them you're wrong? Or I don't know, is that an option? What would you be your advice on this?
I feel like I'm just showing up. I am showing up my authentic self every single day, whatever that means on that day. If I am put in situations where I feel like it's inappropriate or I'm uncomfortable, then I say so. I'm at this point, all I can do is say so. It's either say so or cry. So I'm tired of crying, so I'm just gonna say so. I feel like comfortable people don't make changes. So if people are always comfortable and we're always looking for ways to tell somebody comfortably that they're doing something wrong, they'll probably never change. So if sometimes you got to be uncomfortable because what you did was inappropriate, you made me uncomfortable by doing that. So now me and you are uncomfortable. Welcome.
Amazing.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
Hi, Cagney. I don't know if you remember, we met several years ago. I don't remember what conference it was, but I remember you gave me a poster. And as soon as you started talking, I was like, oh my God, I know who that is, because I remember your poster presentation was like captivating, just like this great talk you gave us.
Well, thank
you so much. So asking as a white man who is in this space, who wants to support students that have, issues such as like what you're talking about, one thing that I run into is when people share stuff with me, I'm not quite sure what my role should be. My first instinct is like, I want to go, and when I hear that a faculty member did something that, is inappropriate or whatever, I want to go and like talk to that person myself and like, tell them this is not appropriate, blah, blah, blah. But I sometimes don't know whether that's crossing the line or not to do. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about what is the right perspective from somebody in my position to do. Sorry.
Ask them. Say, how can I show up for you in this time? How do you need me to show up for you in this space?
Yeah.
How do you want me? What role do you want me to take in this journey? How can I show up for you? I tell people like immediately, I see you, I hear you. And now that I've seen you and I hear you, the only thing I can do is ask you how you want me to show up for you. I can make assumptions, but who's to know if that assumption is correct? Most people, if you ask them what they want, they'll tell you what they want. So I ask you what you want. How can I show up for you?
Yeah. I think one sort of follow-up on that is like, sometimes I ask them and they say, I don't want to do anything about it, or I don't know. But in the end, like if we're going to change things, like Maruna is sort of like bringing up, right? Like something has to be done. We have to do something. And then I feel sort of stuck like, okay, well, we're going to keep going with the status quo.
Well, if they tell me they don't know, then I give them options. I could go talk to such and such for you if you need me to. That you could go talk to this person, and what you say to this person, they can't go back and repeat it. That there's this office that is on this campus that is specifically designed to support you in situations like this. And if you need me to be the person that writes this office and tells them what's happening to you, I will do so.
Right. Got it. All right. Thank you.
I also have a little bit of follow-up on this, not to take more time from my questions, but I really want people to learn to participate more in this conversation. And it is clear that these people here are the ones that are willing to change, or the ones that have been through something like this, and they are part of the change. And I trust that today, all of us here, we are part of the change. However, how can we make this a more general thing? I've been always proposing something like this as mandatory trainings at the Postdoctoral Association that I lead this at CUNY. Everyone is against mandatory open discussions about inclusivity. So how can we do this to reach as many years to be part of the change?
People are against it because people don't want to be uncomfortable, right? The discussion is uncomfortable. I'm not sure what we do at this point. I'm still figuring that out every day. Sometimes I'm navigating like, should I say this? And then after I said it, I'm like, ooh, look how uncomfortable they feel. I wonder what the repercussions of me saying this is. I feel like some days I get up and I make a conscious decision that some of the things that come out of my mouth may affect my career, but I'd rather say the things that need to be said than be successful. If science can't handle my truth, then science wasn't the space that was meant for me in the first place.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you.
I have a question. It's like a little off the top that we've been in, but our organization, CCMI Wins, has actually been looking at trying to start an outreach program with some of the local schools. I was wondering, since your initiative was so successful, do you have any advice for us?
Show up. If you create the partnership, show up. That's how you get momentum. Like, NerdSquad starts a collaboration with someone. We come every single week for a whole year. We never miss. If I can't go, someone from NerdSquad goes. Even when sometimes the classes aren't fun and the kids are dancing on the table and they're. One time I got the yo-yo company to like donate all these yo-yos. So I had this great idea that I was going to teach physics with yo-yos. And after the first class, every single yo-yo was broke, but I still came back the next week. You just got to keep showing up. That's basically how it works. Make it fun. The things that you're passionate about, share your passions.
How did you guys do it during the Zoom world? Like, when I assume things are not in person as much as they were before.
No, so this year we created these tap-in kits, and basically they're designed to help you tap into your inner scientist. So in the kit, you get a petri dish, you get forceps, you get a lab coat, you get a mason jar, you get a fold scope, you get all these little materials. And then we designed these manuals. One is for elementary, one is for middle, and one is for high school. And it contains 20 to 25 activities that cost under $20. And basically you can just like send we have a link, and you can go on the link and request a kit, and we'll mail you a kit. And so it's connected to our YouTube page, where I got like all of these different scientist friends that I have to like do some of the activities out of the kit. Out of the manuals. And then they interact, like people can come and comment underneath and leave messages about what they want to do. And then people can come and just basically say, ooh, I want to do that. They can comment under, say what they like. If they get stuck or have problems, we go through and answer, oh, it's okay, it's science. It doesn't always work right. Try tweaking it this way or try doing it that way. So they seem to be doing really good. We've given out almost 1,000 kits.
That is impressive. Do you have different sessions online, or is that difficult to organize? I'm thinking about Zoom bombing and things like that.
Well, we have STEM Club on Thursdays with middle schoolers from all over. They can just log in and do STEM Club. And if you join our STEM Club, then we send you a kit, because the kits that we use for the STEM Club are different. And so we send you a kit for the STEM Club that has all the materials that you need to do the activities that we're doing in the STEM Club Zoom. But that's the only like major thing we have going on right now, because I'm still transitioning into this postdoc. So I kind of need to focus just a little bit on getting the hang of things around here.
As I said, I do have so many questions. So do you have any, or what would be your take on the COVID-19 vaccine, and whether there is something that as scientists, despite the fact that we're not directly microbiologists or people that work with COVID, is there something that we can do to increase awareness about the benefits of the vaccine? And I don't even know if we're allowed to do that, but at least, I don't know, on a non-official, I don't know, actually, what would be your take on what do you do when people ask you about the vaccine, or have you tried to reach different communities? Or
so in my community, I'm pretty much the only scientist that most people know. And so basically they ask me, and I give them my scientific perspective. I try to make it as very straightforward and to the point as possible. And then I give them resources. If you want to follow up on the things I've said to you, these are the places to go. But most of the time they don't ask me that. They just literally message me and say, you're the only scientist I know. So if you say taking this vaccine is important, then I'm gonna do it. If you say I need to wear a mask, then I'm gonna do it. So then I write back, take the vaccine, wear a mask. If I say you're gonna do it, then fine, take the vaccine, wear a mask. And like when people are like objecting, I'm like, well, you don't get to celebrate that I'm the only scientist you know if you won't even listen to the only scientist you know. So don't celebrate me if you're not gonna listen to me when my thoughts and my facts contradict the way you think you feel. Or when it contradicts your Google degree. Because a lot of people will be arguing with me with their Google degree, and I'd be like, wait a minute, because I got a real degree. This is not it.
That is a good point. I think we've all been through. I'm Romanian, as I said. I was trained there, so yeah, there are not many scientists of my age in my generation there either. So people on Facebook reach out to me that I haven't spoken with in like 15 years. So I totally relate on this one.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I got like hundreds of messages a day. It was like slightly overwhelming. I would like message people back like, I'm not a virologist. I'm a molecular biologist. I know about DNA and RNA and proteins, so I can tell you how this is working out. But I really don't know everything and all the mechanisms and all of that. I just don't. It's not what I do. And they're like, well, I thought all scientists know all science. No. If that's not how this works. And I did not wake up every day just knowing everything. I know a really, really small part of science, and somebody else knows a really, really small part of science, and we like put our minds together, and now we know this much science. It's kind of how it works. People are like, oh, yeah. I also have to tell people a lot. Science is not magic. I mean, I think of it like magic, but that's just a metaphor. In real life, it's not magic. It's like trial and error. We have a hypothesis, we want to test it. So we don't just wake up tomorrow and get the facts just because we had the virus today. That's impossible. We will tell you what we know as we know it, the same way we've done with every other thing. It's just how it works.
Absolutely, indeed.
I was wondering if, do you have any advice for students starting grad school about, like, you seem to have found a really supportive mentor and been able to weed out what seemed like kind of a toxic one. Do you have any advice for like some ways for students to pick good mentors?
Find your people. Find your people. Like, you cannot if you make it through, you can't make it through grad school alone. I'm sure plenty of people have, but I say that I would not have made it through grad school without my people. I say find your people, whether that's a group of students in your program who you get along with really great, and y'all have vent sessions and y'all can go and relate to each other, whether that's an online science Twitter community that you go and talk to and vent to, or if that's just your family or whatever you need, a therapist. I would not have made it through grad school without therapy. Just period, with a dot on the end. Therapy, I needed to go to therapy too. Like, I would go to therapy and be like, this happened today, but everybody else acted normal. Am I tripping, or is this wrong still in the world? And my therapist would be like, oh no, that's wrong. I'd be like, oh, okay, because everybody else acted normal, but I was the only person freaking out. And I just wanted to know if it was me or if it's them. Am I just too sensitive? And I needed that. I needed her to like be a neutral person and tell me, no, it is inappropriate to say things like that to people. I don't know why someone would say that. Okay, cool. I thought that was the case, but since everybody else just acted like business as usual, I thought maybe this is just how science is or something. I don't really know.
Again, like that is something that I also like, I struggle with. Like when people in my experience, there are people that are actually the people around them acknowledge the fact that they are toxic, they are harmful to their trainees. Why do they still why are they trainees? Exactly. Why are they still allowed to have trainees after so many? Just because they produce papers? Is that a good argument? A good enough argument to I struggle with that question. And again, like getting back to the idea of like, what can we do as trainees? I am a trainee at the end of the day, and obviously I don't have any power to implement changes. So what can we do?
That's the $1 million question, to be honest. I feel like at some point as trainees, we gonna have to like band together and like really like have some demands. I think PIs have a lot of power and it's scary. It's scary to like combat that. It's scary to like go against it. You're always like walking on eggshells because you want to be true to yourself, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where you rub the PI too wrong and then they decide they don't want you in their lab, or they'll do whatever they can to stop you from graduating. Like they have all the power. So it's really hard and really nerve-wracking. And I think the system needs to change. I don't think PI should have that much power. That is too much. Graduate students should have a union or something. We should have someone who fights for us and someone who protects us against things. Because some of the things that I hear grad students go through, I'm like, this person can't possibly be bringing in that much money that the university thinks this is okay. But it's really how it operates.
But at least for PhD,
tell me like I survived. Why won't you?
Right. Yeah, at least for PhD students, they have committee members, right? Like they have a group of other scientists that you wish, and I'm sure in most cases, right? Like when someone is extremely showing an abuse of power, they will step in. That's the one thing that you will hope for. For postdocs, though, that's something that doesn't quite exist. And again, like the people are against implementing such things. So there's still something to think about in general, about like you said, like about the system in general, because some of us are just, you know, lucky and blessed to have amazing supervisors, and some others don't have that choice, don't have that opportunity. So
I think that PI should have to go through like some kind of mentorship training or something like that. Like they need to actually be taught how to be mentors. They might not know that. Not every PI was just like a great people person and is outgoing and energetic and knows how to communicate or any of that. That's not what everybody does. So it could just be that it's in the training before you just throw them in the lab, tell them recruit graduate students and do great science and write grants, that you teach them how to manage a lab, how to be a boss of people, how to mentor, how to support, because it might be that a lot of them just don't have that skill.
Definitely. Liz, go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to turn my camera on, but no, I was just like, that's such a great idea. Like I am very lucky to have a wonderful mentor, but I know so many people don't. And like that sort of just mentor training, I don't know why that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One time we were in a faculty meeting and I asked all the PIs, I was like, do you consider yourself a safe space for your students? And they were all looking at me like, what's a safe space? Well, how do you expect your students to tell you when life is interfering with science or science is interfering with life if you're not even creating a safe space for them to come and do that? You have to create that environment if you want your students to feel. I tell people all the time, I was in graduate school and my PI, she's a great PI. She was a wonderful mentor, but she never asked me what I thought I was good at. So in the journey of my PhD, she never supported it. It was late in my PhD before she started to support and recognize where my passion was and how she could have been beneficial to my journey in the beginning, how she just asked me what I thought I was good at and what I thought I was passionate about. Because if she would have asked me that versus only worrying about the things that I wasn't good at, she could have actually helped me grow a lot more as a scientist, as a person, as a mentor, and as an outreach person. But she didn't. And it was so far down the line before it like dawned on her, like, oh, she really cares about science education. Oh, that's really important to her. But like when I mentor students, like the first thing I ask them is, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What do you think you're good at? Are those the things you want me to help you be better at? Is those the way you want me to support you? How can I show up for you if I don't even know what you think you're good at? It's easy to point out what somebody's not good at. That's that comes a dime a dozen. I got like 9,000 things I'm not good at. I don't know how to say half the words in these research papers. So there's a bunch of stuff I'm not good at, but what are the things I'm good at? How can you nurture those and help me build a career around them? Who's to say I would be doing bench science if I would have had that opportunity? Who's to say that Nerd Squad wouldn't be something that I invested in as a career if I would have had the support and the opportunity to actually grow it in that space?
Absolutely amazing. I think, Shruti, did you want to say something? I noticed you.
I had a thought and then I immediately lost it, so don't worry about it.
Come back with the thought.
I realized like this conversation is never had between like a student, like people, like more subordinate people and very high up people. This conversation doesn't exist. So like PIs maybe like don't even know the conversation of how they could, you know, be more flexible or do that, because I don't think this conversation ever exists with like, you know, PIs are here right now, but you know, that's never like, I feel like that's not really a thing.
I think we should expand it to mentors in general, because we all mentor someone at some point, right? So whether we're graduate students, postdocs, faculty, I think that is definitely something that we all need to think about. And I have to say, like, I think I'm trying my best to be a good mentor, but you're absolutely right. I haven't done these particular things as much as perhaps it would have been needed. So definitely something to think about.
As I mentor, I usually go with the theory that I try to mentor based on the things I wanted to be asked to me.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea, indeed. It's it is something very. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were finished. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, then you'll forget your thought again.
I will. Which was, I think it, like, I know, Cagney, you were talking about like maybe it's just a lack of a skill and we need training. But you also mentioned like right before that I think the flip side to that is there needs to be a consequence when you don't uphold like that standard. And so that was Jefferson started doing like a DEI journal club. And the very first session, that was a big topic of conversation, that there is pretty much no consequence for people who don't uphold a standard of behavior. And there didn't seem to be a clear answer on how to introduce that consequence and what level the consequence needs to be introduced from. And like pretty much, frankly, the only thing I could think of was just going on strike. But like that's...
Yeah, but strike for researchers doesn't work, right? Like we were thinking about when
UCSC students did go on strike. They went on, I don't know how long they went on strike for, but they went on strike for a while during the pandemic, like recently, because of expectations for teaching hours, grading hours, and not being financially supported, commiserate with what they were doing, like the amount of work that they were putting in. I don't remember the outcome of the strike or if it might still be ongoing, but there is a recent example of an entire graduate school just deciding to go on strike.
I don't know if strike's the best way to go, because at the end of the day, the less time they're doing work, the longer they're going to be stuck in the hell. So strike, I don't know. I do 100% think there should be consequences, but the problem is the moment you start talking consequences, the people who usually have the worst behavior are the ones who usually have the most power. So you start talking consequences, they automatically start thinking, oh, that could come down on me. Let's change the subject. So I do think consequences are necessary, but I have no clue like how we get to a space where that is actually something that people are willing to carry out. I just don't see it. I've been caught intimidating so many times just because I'm just very blunt and like straightforward. Like, that's inappropriate. I don't know why you would do that. Who talks to people this way? I'm a human being. I would never speak to you that way. Why would you speak to me that way? And it's like, oh, you're aggressive. I'm not. You are wrong. And even if you insult me nicely, it's still inappropriate. Just because you do it with bells and whistles doesn't make it nice. It doesn't make it okay.
I would just say, like, as a faculty member, you know, that I don't think there is an easy solution, which I think we're all like discussing, but I think we just have to keep, working to get people that are, responsible people, that people care about these issues, the people that have good ethic and moral background, to get them into positions. And like, for instance, our dean who's left here, so I'm not kissing her butt to say this, but like, I think she's somebody who cares like really about like these kind of issues. And so I'm so glad that somebody like her is now in a position that she's above all the faculty members, in our division. So hopefully when things happen, people like her are gonna not just look the other way. People like her are not gonna just let it go. But.
I agree. I feel like over time, we will have next generation of scientists stepping into the position. I consider some of us the next generation of scientists. And I think of my friend groups, including you, ma'am, that we are a different type of scientist. I think that we are really vocal. We're really well-rounded people. And I think that we are coming to find our space in this world. And I feel like when we come and we start demanding, things are going to change. I feel like although my journey in graduate school was hard, UK is a better place because of it. Although they might not have always liked the fact that I was very vocal about my opinions, and although it may have rubbed people wrong and it may have made them uncomfortable, hindsight is 2020. And on the other side of that, as a department, I see them growing daily and weekly. And there's Black faculty there now. I was there for 6 years. They didn't even have Black presenters for 4 years. Like, they are hiring Black faculty. They are supporting their graduate students. They are thinking about the whole graduate student, mind, body, and soul of a graduate student. And I feel like those changes were needed, and I might have needed to make them really uncomfortable a lot for them to get to that space. But in the process of making them uncomfortable, those changes are coming, and the grad students that come after me will experience a different environment from the one that I did. And I'm okay with that.
I think that is an amazing thing to end this conversation, because I think that summarizes everything and our goal. Again, this conversation has been extremely inspiring, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And I hope people will get to the opportunity to listen to you in the future, and I'm sure we will all hear from you at a. You're growing exponentially from now on. I see that. And so I am very honored that you accepted our invitation today. And I think we will all hope to be in touch.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That was incredible.
Everything with everyone.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for participating as well. I'll see you guys soon.